Hey folks, thanks for tuning in for another video. I was kind of giving some thought to some different ideas for videos that I've been having, and one of them I thought that might be kind of fun is to sort of revisit some knives that I've already reviewed, and I kind of wanted to reserve it for knives that I've owned for at least a year, or and even in some cases maybe I've had a video, that I put up a review or a purchase video, a year ago, and I've had it and used it and carried it for quite some time, and then kind of give you a little bit more sort of in-depth thoughts. I've had it for such a long time and kind of let you know how I've gotten along with it. And I thought that this would be a good knife to start with. This is, of course, the Spyderco Tenacious, and I've had it for well over a year. I don't recall exactly when I purchased it. It wasn't when I had the review up. So once I had put the review of this knife up, which was over a year ago, I had already owned the knife for several months from that time. But I just kind of wanted to revisit it real quick, kind of show you the overall condition, and just give you some little updates on my thoughts, which there won't be very many changes to what I said in my review at all, and this is going to be a really short video. Well, short for me anyway. But mainly I just kind of wanted to show you the condition. Now you'll have to forgive me, as I was using this knife several days ago in my backyard doing a little bit of weeding, and or excuse me, it was actually in the front yard doing some weeding. And I know I'm guilty here, you've caught me, but I have not cleaned this knife. So the blade is really dirty and it has a bunch of dried, gunky plant matter on there and dirt. It's probably developed a hint of rust, but I'll clean it up, and since this is a work knife, that's not really going to be an issue. It probably could also use some oil at the pivot. But this knife has been used day in and day out, Monday through Friday, with few exceptions. I did start to rotate in a few other knives into my work EDC, but this was my main work EDC knife for probably a full year. And this actually replaced a CRKT M16, and for whatever reason I was carrying an M16 Tanto blade for my work knife. I don't know why. It worked okay, but this was a nice little upgrade from that knife. And it's held up really well. The lockup, the vertical lockup, top and bottom, up and down there, is still perfectly solid, just as it was the day that I received it, factory fresh. A little bit of side-to-side play, just a small amount, and that's really just because that's where I like to have the pivot set to my preferred tension. The blade centering, as you can see there, is pretty good. Tends to kind of lean a little bit that way if I had to choose, but almost nearly centered. It definitely doesn't rub either of the steel liners inside. And lockup is still really nice. It hasn't traveled all the way over, and this knife gets... I don't flick my knives very often anymore these days. I just tend to open them slower. I don't really know why, but when I first was getting into knives for the first few years, I was a big, everything's got to be able to flick open fast. Everything just has to, it has to wave out of my pocket, or it has to be assisted open. It has to have a flipper, and I've definitely moved away from that mentality over the years. But this knife, because I'm opening this knife with gloves, and because I do often open this knife in a hurry, this knife gets flicked open almost every single time, and you can see the lockup on there is still really nice, despite that hard use, or whatever you want to call that, and hasn't introduced any wobble or play in the blade or in the lock at all, which is nice. The G10 has worn down fairly significantly since I first purchased it. You can see it's actually got some kind of shiny patches to it, a little bit of baldness here and there where it's just rubbed on my pocket or in my hand, or have dropped it, in the dirt or in the rocks so many times. And you can see that wear is actually most evident where it is on almost all of my folding pocket knives, which is right near the clip. You can see I do carry this tip up, and it's got quite a bit of wear right towards that end, the end of the handle. And that's just because that's the part that beats against my tool belt. That's where my gloves are going to hit it. That's where my hammer hits it in my tool belt. If there's anything that kind of bumps against it, if I bump up against the work truck or something, all the main abuse of the handle of the knife is going to happen right here. And in spite of that, I'd say that it's actually still holding up beautifully. It's worn, but I kind of like the look of a worn knife, a well-used and well-loved knife. And that's definitely what this Spyderco Tenacious is. So the screw construction is all still perfect. The clip is still just as tight as it was when I first got it. Tension is still remarkable. I have not stripped out or damaged any of the screws, despite the fact that this clip's gotten caught on stuff a few times at work, because I'm a little bit clumsy sometimes and it gets snagged, but no big deal there. It's been dropped, it's been momentarily lost a few times. It's been rusty. It had developed a patina for a while that I actually was able to kind of buff out of it and restore it to its nice original shininess. And the edge has been absolutely beautiful. I would touch this up about once a week on my Spyderco Sharp Maker and strop it probably once a day lightly at work to keep it shaving sharp, because I do tend to use it to shave a wooden survey lathe. And it's just been absolutely remarkable. A little bit of a worn tip from where I've kind of slipped on my Spyderco Sharp Maker a few times. Anyone who owns one long enough and owns enough knives will definitely find that phenomenon for themselves at some point. And overall, just in really great shape. So a year later, actually well over a year later, the Spyderco Tenacious is still performing beautifully, getting used all the time, and just holding up like a champ. So if you are someone who's kind of on the fence about a Spyderco Tenacious, if you own one and you wanted a little bit more of an in-depth sort of view into it after it's been used aggressively for a decent length of time, there you have it. This is the Spyderco Tenacious at least 1 year later. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.